I'm David Donaldson. I work with IFC InfraVentures, as do a number of people in this room. I'm responsible for Sub-Saharan Africa, so this region, for IFC InfraVentures. By way of introduction, so this is a panel where the eminent CEOs sitting to my left are going to put a bit of granularity onto our discussions and talk about the projects that they're looking at in their pipeline right now. Interest you maybe a little bit, or maybe a little bit of matchmaking, interest you in what those projects look like, and talk about some of the challenges that they see coming up. And just 2 words of introduction. So we were here last year, many of us, certainly from the IFC team. There have been a bunch of changes since last year. Some old familiar faces and some new faces. A bunch of things have been relatively surprising. So I don't think this time last year we would have said oil prices at $30 a barrel. I didn't hear people talking about that. Macroeconomic forecast for Africa, 3.5%. The lowest, it's not been less than 5% since, well, the last decade or more. Azura has actually closed. Now there's a surprise. Maybe not, but it's a fantastic thing. Leicester City won the UK Premiership. Now that is a surprise. On the other hand, a couple of things have stayed the same. Singida, Tanzania, we're still waiting for our PPA, and probably will be next year. But one of the things that I was been struck by during the course of the discussion this morning is there are more project developers sitting around here and active in Africa, particularly in the upstream space, than there were a year ago. This is a significantly changing market. The space is becoming, it's very, very exciting. The space to a certain degree is becoming more competitive. We've been talking about competition and bidding earlier on this morning. Maybe some of my colleagues can touch on that. I think it's very exciting, and I think it bodes well for the future of project development in Africa. So I'm going to introduce one by one our colleagues, and they're going to tell you how excited they are about the projects that they're working on, and then we'll turn over to you guys for some questions. So we'll start off immediately on my left, I think. Johan de Vos is the managing director of Gigajoule, based here in South Africa. He's been an engineer for 35 years, I understand, but managing director of a project development company more recently. Gigajoule has closed and is operating the Matola gas project in Mozambique, the Gigawatt project also in Mozambique, and Johan has got a bunch more stuff that he's looking at. So over to you, Johan. Thanks.
Thanks, David. Just perhaps 1 second of history. We actually started as a natural gas distribution and transmission company, and we've been selling and transporting gas for the last 11 years. Selling gas today to 30 industries, a gas vehicle fleet in Mozambique, and recently now to 3 power stations. And that just didn't happen. In 2006, we saw the opportunity to convert gas molecules to electrons. And I went and saw the minister, and I actually got a laugh, because at that stage, Mozambique was bringing in Cabora Bassa power through a swap deal from South Africa. And any number that would make gas power feasible was 3 to 4 times of what they were getting gas from the hydro. And then fortunately 2008 came for us, and in 2010 we signed a concession agreement. In 2012 we sat on more gas that we could handle in the industries, and we were then fortunate to do a rental deal. We brought a rental company in with a sub-concession agreement, and that allowed us to create a lot of the infrastructure. And then in June 2014, we reached financial close on the 120 megawatt gas power station. I just mentioned, George was here earlier, we did the deal with Standard Bank, Old Mutual, Wilson Bellinghams on the equity side, the ECIC and especially MEGA on the political risk insurance was critical to make the project bankable. June 2014 financial close, and we reached operational date December last year. So we built the plant in 18 months. We've been operating for 4 months now. Touch wood, we've met all our production obligations, and we closed the project on time and within budget. Obviously, the next step for us now is to take that basis and grow. So we're already busy negotiating an expansion of the PPA with EDM. Anything we can produce, they will take now. And looking at synergistic renewable opportunities between gas and other renewable opportunities to the power market.
Great, Johan. Thank you very much. So let's keep on going to the left. Raymond Carlson is the CEO of Scatec Solar. He started off as a professor of environmental engineering, I understand, some time ago, but he's been with Scatec Solar for about 5 years now as a preeminent developer in the solar PV world, not just here in Africa, but globally. So, Raymond, over to you.
Well, I didn't get my professorship. I've never been a professor. But anyways, thank you very much for the introduction. I spent 30 years in the oil and gas business, and for the past 10 years, until 2009, I was running a large international subsea program. So you can't get further away from what I'm doing right now, which is solar. The company is growing fast. We have 190 megawatts in operation here in South Africa, another 258 to go in the Upington area. In total, 400 megawatt in operation. I've committed to the market because we listed a year and a half ago that by end of 2018, we will be operating close to 1.5 gigawatt. The company has evolved from being a pure European player to understanding the needs of various countries, including this country and other countries. So we have now, I think, established ourselves as maybe I'm putting too big of a word into my mouth, but a leading emerging segment. I went skiing over Easter, cross country, and that gives you a lot of time to think. I hope that we'll be able to also talk about what we're in the middle of at the moment, and that is a disruptive change of the energy market, particularly within the solar segment, driven by the sun rays and the batteries. Because the people that sit on the fence and wait will lose out on something that is extremely big. But I can get back to that maybe later on, and then hand over to my friend here on the left-hand side.
So thanks, Raymond. I think we'd like to get back to that. Jose Angel Gonzalez is the CEO of AEE Power, another engineer, another 30 years or more of experience in Africa, so we've got a lot of experience on this panel. AEE Power as an EPC contractor has been involved in a number of projects. Jose Angel is based in DRC, and is also a key part of the consortium, the Spanish consortium, bidding for the Inga project that we've mentioned today. So, Jose Angel.
Thank you, David. Thank you to invite me. I thought my English is very bad, but you have insisted that I'm here. And I'm here. I'm very happy to realize that I'm not alone in the world. And there are a lot of people who share the same problems that I have. Our experience as EPC contractor, I'm the second generation of an EPC company in Africa, led us to believe that we can be a good developer. 3-4 years ago, we have started developing a pipeline of 21 projects in 7 countries in Africa. And it's a challenge, as you know. It's a challenge of regulations, of mentality. We have to change a lot of things. And it's a very frustrating business because it takes a lot of money without any security to finish, to arrive to the financial closing. And we are in this challenge of develop all these projects. And it is frustrating because you have the paradox that in the market, as you know, there are exuberant quantities of liquidity of capital. For example, in this week that we are here, the debt of the United States will rise, will be augmented in $50 billion. $50 billion is the budget of the World Bank for Africa, only in 1 week. $27 trillion are the debt of Germany, and this debt is the GDP of Africa. 37 gigawatts of PV solar plants has been invested in Germany in the last 25 years, 20 years. 37 gigawatts is the operational power installed in South Africa, and the 40% of the total power installed in Africa. So it gives an idea of how much liquidity there are in the market. But in the demand side, 600 million people in Africa, almost the population of Europe, has not access to electricity. And I say that these poor people, 600 millions, are able to pay a high rate of electricity. Most of them. We can discuss if it's 200 millions, 300 millions, they can pay electricity. And they can pay electricity at very profitable rates because they have energy and they are paying very expensive this energy. This energy comes from batteries, fuel, charcoal. Only in Kinshasa, in the peri-urban of Kinshasa, there are an informal market of charcoal between 500 and 1,000 million each year. So we have a lot of people who are crying needs of electricity who can pay, and we have exuberant liquidity in the markets. How put together, how we'll be able to catalyze this reaction? We can go after.
All right, Jose Angel, those are big thoughts. Let me turn to Luis Castellano. He is the founder and CEO of Alten, another solar developer. He's been with Alten since its inception for 10 years now, and he's going to talk a little bit more about this game-changing solar market.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I will explain a little bit what we have been doing for the last 10 years in photovoltaic. A lot of experience, I think, in a new electricity sector for utility scale. We started in Spain in 2006. We are an IPP. We make our own development. We manage the process, the construction, the financing, and we invest and we keep our assets. Okay. After our experience in Europe, we saw a potential in the competitive photovoltaic. It's a big change when you can produce electricity with the sun in a competitive way. So 4 years ago, the founder and the CEO of the largest photovoltaic company in Spain came with us with a team, and we started an ambitious development project in Latin America, mainly in Mexico, and in Africa in some selected countries. The experience of the management team is quite substantial, more than 45 power plants developed and in operation with total investment of 1.5 billion euros. This is our expertise, and we came to Africa. And initially we selected the most attractive, we think, the countries at that time, Kenya, Nigeria, and Namibia, the three countries, because they need the electricity, they have the experience in IPPs, PPAs discussions, etc. The legal conditions are well developed. So, well, after the experience that I can tell you, after 3 years of developing projects, photovoltaic, which is something quite different to other power plants. Basically, photovoltaic is easy to start the development, but it's very difficult to finalize. This is the problem that we face in most countries, where you are working under a feed-in tariff, for example. You start with an expression of interest. Usually, well, not in these countries because we started quite early, but usually there are many developers trying to have the expression of interest because it's easy to start. And the utility or the ministry has to accept, or they are accepting, all the solar developments. And this is a challenge for us, for Alten, and this is a challenge for the utility company that needs to have the discussions, etc., with too many companies. And it's very difficult for them to make a difference between the real projects, the experienced developers, and the others. Okay. Well, now I can tell you that after this experience, we are quite happy in Kenya because we have been able to sign finally the PPA, and we are working to reach financial close of the first 52 megawatt power plant. In Nigeria also we are very close, okay, to do it with a fantastic partner in the project, which is IFC. And then in Namibia also we had a good but weird experience. In Namibia we went 3 years ago. They launched a tender process for 3 projects of 10 megawatts. After 2 years of the tender, we won the tender against some strong companies, Enel, for example, the Italian. And the problem, and it's something that could happen in other countries in Africa, it's Enel could go to the High Court to challenge because the procedures of the whole process was not exactly as it had to be. Okay, so NamPower now is thinking to repeat again the tender, etc. So one of the advices, be careful with the tenders, be careful with the auctions, okay? You can think it's the best way to have the best tariff, but the best tariff in a project that is not going to be done, that is, you know, that's useless, okay? So, you know, I think that it's a good experience, IFC, with the scaling solar. In my opinion, the problem with the scaling solar is that it's a problem for IFC, okay? It's because it's too expensive in a country for 1 or 2 projects, small projects in terms of investment. The whole process is too expensive. Thank you.
Luis, thank you very much. So one of the questions I was going to ask was about competition and views on negotiated deals. But let's turn to Henry to complete our first circuit. So Henry's already been on this morning, and we know him well. He used to be with AES, so one of the first and certainly preeminent power developers in Africa for a long time, and indeed worldwide, and has recently taken over as CEO of Globeleq. So Henry, very interesting to me that what you see in the current environment is the need for Globeleq to move more upstream in project development. And I'd love to hear, and we'd love to hear, where you're looking and what sort of projects you're targeting.
And happy to talk about that, but out of curiosity, I'd love to poll the audience, if that's okay. Okay, just try to figure out how many people have actually been developing projects for how long. If you were a developer for an IPP company, any place in the world, and were developing a power project to be financed under a non-recourse basis in 1990 or earlier, 1990 or earlier, raise your hand. Okay, we got one. 1995 or earlier. There's 1, 2, 3, 2. Okay, 2000. So 2005. Okay, well now we're starting to get some hands. 2010. Okay, so the experience is very limited at best. The only person that raised his hand or didn't raise their hand in 1990 was me. The critical issue here is development is very different than being a banker, being a PE guy. You know, it's a different business. And it's a different person trying to do something very different. So what we're trying to do is make Global Ec a developer. And I would have to say that we are not there, but we're working to get there. And we're spending time migrating in that direction. I don't know if that's good.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, that gives us the general sense. I think I'm certainly interested in a few specifics, but let me pass it over to the audience and invite some questions. So, you know, grill these guys, ask them. We've heard mentioned Kenya, Nigeria, Namibia, Mozambique is a new expanding market. Grill them on where they see the action, and Raymond and Luis on this these game-changing developments that are happening in the solar field. Grill Henry on where exactly he's going to be sending his shock troops. Before we go there, Tom at the back there, I think I chased you from the panel, but if you would like the first opportunity to speak briefly about I think you're involved in a hydro development in Zambia, is that correct? Feel free. Oh, you're speaking, right. You were a day early.
I'll get slightly repetitive,
Yeah.
I think, if I speak now, but if you'd like me to, I'm very happy to.
Okay, Tom, we'll those of us who are there, we'll give you a chance tomorrow. That sounds fantastic. It's better to be a day early than 5 years late, which is the more common experience of us. So, anybody else? Questions for the panel? Okay, guys, so... oh, wait, we have one. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara.
One of the key points that has come up is the very nature of renewable energy is a lot of these projects are smaller, right? You have a lot of stuff off grid, you've got coverage, very eloquent, the point of all the people that don't have access, how to scale. How do you guys attack the problem of identifying and working with local partners, developers, that in fact have zero track record, zero equity, you know, but may be essential to achieving scale and local buy-in? Or maybe you don't see it as an issue.
That's a great question, Barbara. So Henry's putting his hand up. Should we let him go first? Henry, go ahead.
That's a great question, Barbara, because that's so often the case is that we're trying to work with a local partner because a local partner brings something to the table. And really the key to that marriage is to understand what the local partner is bringing to the table and what the other partner, you know, whether it's us or somebody else, is bringing to the table. And both sides recognizing, you know, what that is and how this goes forward. There's a huge education process with local partners in the meantime because, you know, very few of them, unless they're very experienced, in which case they may or may not need you, or as they wouldn't need a company like Global Ec, they need more of a financier as a partner. This whole idea of project financing just drives them nuts. And I know there was a lot of debate about this earlier on, and I would just say it's an absolute must in our industry Companies that deviated for that have failed miserably, whether or not you're a platform or something else, because it becomes too easy to cut corners, and it becomes too easy to decide that you've somehow became brilliant overnight and you figured everything out. And I love having a bank with me when my off-taker is defaulting. Right now, my off-taker is defaulting badly in Tanzania, and I'm standing there by myself with nobody banging on his door. So I'm going to have to turn off the plant, and DAR very may well go into the dark. But that's the only way I'm going to get paid, and that's not the right way to do it.
Great, Henry, thanks. I've got two people winking at me, Raymond first of all, and then Johan. Thanks.
What I didn't say in my introduction is that Scatec Solar has an integrated business model. So we have been doing development. We know what it takes to develop. We do construction management. We do the O&M, and we remain as investors for the next 20 to 25 years. And of course, if you have detailed knowledge of all these elements, then I think it's quite helpful when you're trying to identify who you should cooperate with in terms of partnerships. Very early, when we are looking at an opportunity, we just have to imagine what the end game is going to be. So, actually putting all the different elements into your financial models, knowing exactly what it takes to be able to close the various elements is essential. I mentioned this before, but it is actually possible to develop and finance and build a project very fast. Gigawatt had developed a project in Rwanda. They invited us in November, I think 2 years ago now, is it? We put the financing package together in 4.5 months. We built it in 3, and it was opened by our Prime Minister, 9 months after we were introduced to the project. So this is possible. Now, with integrated in a business model, you are able to remove some of the friction losses that you have in between the various stakeholders by having holistic and a full understanding of what you need to succeed. And I think that is the reason why we have been very successful. I also have to say that I've given up a few of the countries. I gave up Namibia. We were there for 3 years. The government didn't seem to be able to actually move forward in a proper way. We spent $1 million or $2 there to position ourselves because we thought we saw the needs. And the needs are there. But they have an inability to run a professional program. Of course, you have to do that to be able to succeed. We have pulled out of several countries and moved into others. Thanks.
Good. Yeah, you've got to make hard decisions sometimes as a project developer and turn your back on large sums of money. Johan, Mozambique, special environment for local partners.
Yeah, I think just to add to what Margaret said, there's another dimension in a place like Mozambique. It is a level of economic development. If you're in a country that's had 100 years or 200 years of capitalist system, they understand the free market principle. It's much easier to bring local developers into the project. But if you're in a country that's had a different history, which is only now growing into the realm of free market system, it's much tougher to make a distinction between partners that's real contributors to the project and partners with a political background. And in our case, we had to go through the loops with MIGA, with Standard Bank, with the IFC. So we had to ensure from day one that we've got project developers that can first of all contribute to the project, but it's not politically exposed. And we're sitting in a situation right now where 2 months ago, our customer was late in payment. And I didn't resolve the problem, the local partners resolved it. And that's the type of partners you need to choose.
Yeah, no, exactly. Luis, Jose Angel, Jose Angel, I know you have strong views on the involvement of people from the country you're operating in.
We are operating in 7 countries in Africa, but DRC is the most old country that we have from 1972. So I spoke before about the frustrating business of develop something, and to put together a huge amount of liquidity in the market, but they are not good projects, they are not bankable projects. And I think that the role of developers is to make the projects bankable. And one of the international financial institutions, in my opinion, will shift the paradigm, and I think that you are doing, is not to put more money in the market, because there are money. Lack of money is not the problem, but put credibility. Credibility in the projects, credibility in off-takers. And that is the more difficult thing. There are huge amount of capitals, but these capitals are afraid of risk Africa. How we can mitigate the perception of the market of risk, of this risk, Africa risk. I think that in this perception of risk is exaggerated in the financial market. Is due that lack of knowledge of the market about the Africa. But it's true also that there are a long way to work in increase the credibility of utilities, governments, off-takers, even the people. But there are thousands or millions of people that can pay electricity with very high rates, and they have not an economic problem, they have a financial problem. They are solvents, but they are not bankables. To provide bankability, credibility, must be our aim. And I think that IFC is in the good path to get this different approach. Imagine that the total amount of the World Bank is in the world is 60 billions. Only 2.8 billions are for the MIGA. And I believe that these 2.8 billions of dollars can raise more money from the private market than the 60 billions of money that the World Bank are injected in the market. So warranties can raise a lot of more money, a lot of more private capital than loans or grants. Poor people don't need loans or grants, need credibility, need warranties. And I hope that in the future, these 60 billions of money will become 60 billions of warranties. And you will have, I hope, the first trillion invest in the power sector in Africa. Because we are speaking about trillions. And that is the need, a crying need of trillions of invest in Africa. And they are bankable off-takers, but we need to give them, with our work, with our talent, with your talent, with your warranties, the bankability that they deserves.
Thanks, Jose Angel. So yes, indeed, the market, the potential market is huge. Luis, on the subject of local partners, we have some common experience there, but do you have some observations to make?
Yeah, basically, to develop a project or to have a project to reach financial close, you can do two things. You can develop the project from scratch, or you can reach, or you can acquire a project that is at an advanced stage. Okay, there are two options. Okay. If you want to do the first option, this is our approach. We develop the projects ourselves from scratch as the way to guarantee a competitive solar project, okay? As I said, it's very easy to develop a project, but it's not so easy to develop a good project. In a good place, no problems with the site, the land, interconnection, no way, no transmission line, etc. You have to do it yourself, and for that, you need to become the local developer. Okay, so you need to open an office in the country. You need to have your own people in the country to develop a project. The local partner is key, but it is not key for the day-to-day development of the project. Okay, one of the things that for us it's key when we start a project is to have a very significant local partner, but we take care of the development of the project.
Very good. Okay, my elbow was grabbed. I think we have 150 years of experience, I think, more or less, sitting at the table here. They've given us an hour of their time. We better let them get back to developing those projects. So maybe a round of applause for our contributors. Thanks very much indeed.
Doing business in Africa, you can't afford to be without Africa Investor.